Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have an interview with author Maureen Devlin. Next week, there will be another episode of the Book Fair Podcast covering new releases, as well as another interview next Friday. Now, let's get started with an interview with Maureen Devlin. Hello, Maureen. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's so wonderful to meet you, and I wanted to say thank you so much for offering your time today and being so generous with your time to speak with me.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate what you're doing.
Can you start us off just by introducing yourself for the audience and what the work is that we'll be discussing today?
Sure. My name, obviously, is Maureen Devlin. I am a mom of twins. I am the aunt of 5. I am the grand aunt of 4 and 1 on the way. In a former life, not in the not too distant past, I was a lawyer for a long number of years, and focusing primarily on criminal defense. I left that when my husband was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and I needed to stop working. I stopped working to take care of him. And what I found that I wanted to do was to bring some joy and life and hope back into my life and hopefully in other people's lives. And I wanted to do something that I could do also while taking care of David. And I've always had the idea of these books in my head, thanks to my now 27-year-old twins who never, and I mean never, stopped asking questions or talking to. So we would, I don't know if, you know, when you talk to parenting experts and they always say, just answer the question that the child asks, they won't ask more than they want to know, then they can handle. Well, I never met those kids. My kids included. It doesn't really work that way. They just tend to keep going, right? Like, but why? But where did that come from? So when I was reading with my kids and talking with my kids, one of them coined that phrase, going backer and backer to find out, because they would just keep going backer and backer. So for instance, we would talk about, as an example, something like an apple, right? Something in the farmer's market or at the store. And the questions would be, well, how did it get there? Well, the clerk put it there. Well, how did the clerk get it? Well, the clerk got it from the truck driver. Well, how did the truck driver get it? Well, and it just went. So we would have this thing where we'd go backer and backer to find out where's the initial, how did this thing start? So I've always had that kind of in the back of my head. I love that concept. And I think it just sparked some real sense of wonder in them. And while it sometimes, to be totally honest, frustrated me, it was hard to keep, answering questions. I think it was ultimately good for them and good for me to take the time also to think about it. So I now have a series of 5 books. They are all aptly titled, Let's Go Backer and Backer, where the idea is, it's simple, that you take a thing, 4 of them are things, or one of them is a puppy, and you take that, the child holding or handling or playing with that thing, and then we go on a journey, backer and backer, to find out how that child came to have that thing in his or her hand. So there's a book about an apple, a simple apple at the grocery store. So how did we get it? Well, the dad had it. The dad gave it to the child. Well, how did the dad get it? Well, he got it at the store. Well, how did it get to the store? And backer we go until we get to the actual apple tree that produced the apple. So I have 5 out now. There's more in the works. And I have just been loving doing this. It's so much fun. I hope parents and children and caregivers and others will enjoy reading these as much as I have enjoyed writing them.
Something that I find interesting about this series is a lot of times whenever a parent or an educator is working with teaching children, one of the things they'll do is they'll give them something to play with, and then we'll bring questions to the child. However, these books these books address something that just comes naturally to young people, which is asking their own questions. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having this entire process be guided by the young person in the book?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's just respecting the child's natural curiosity. You have to take the time to listen to their questions. The endless whys of, why this, how that, how the other thing. I think that's instead, that's how I learn. It's probably how you learn, what you're interested in. So paying attention to what where the child is. What are their questions? What is the thing in their hand that they're interested in? I think that's, if you just pay attention to what questions they might have without assuming what those questions are, I think that's the way to go, is to just to listen and wonder with them about, and to, sometimes the answer, right, is, I don't know, let's find out, right? That's always a good answer.
And like you said, wonder with them. Sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know. And so when it came to you writing these books, what are some topics that you weren't immediately aware of that you had to go out and research in order to write about?
Every single one of them. I have a college degree, I have a master's degree, I have a Juris Doctor degree. This made me feel stupid. I didn't understand the most basic, origin stories of the most basic things. Like, I don't know how a crayon is made. So there's a book about a picture, a boy who's drawing a pretty picture for his mom, and how did he get the crayons? How did he pick the blah blah blah? And I didn't know. I had no idea. Or there's the rubber for a bouncy ball, which not all balls now have natural rubber, but we'll ignore that part. I didn't know. I don't know how all the people who are involved in a shelter that provides homes for stray animals. Like, I don't know these things, right? I don't know how wool gets made from, taken off a sheep and made into, I don't know. So every single one of them, and I'm still doing it. For the next, I have one more coming out about a shell, which turns out to be a clam shell. I had no idea. I had to, which of these shells are clam shells, what can live in a clamshell, what happens to it after the clam is gone, all these things. I didn't know. It takes a long time. I have to talk to people. I have to research it. And then the next two after that I have coming out, it's like embarrassing. This is embarrassing to me. It's going to be a child taking a cool, refreshing drink of water. You turn the tap on and the water comes out. You flip, and the next one is you flick the light switch and the lights come on. How does that happen? Let's go backer and find out. Except I can't quite yet go backer because the truth is I have no idea how this works. It's like a miracle, and I think we don't recognize or appreciate that, right? You turn the tap on, there's the water. It's clean, you can drink it. You flip the switch, there's the lights. I think we've lost that sense of, this is a miracle. This is incredible that this is what happens. Let's make sure people understand that it's not, it's not magic. There's a lot of people involved in making these things happen, and a lot of steps involved in making these things happen. I don't want anybody to take these things for granted. We just live in this age where we think this is you and me talking over a screen. Do you know how that works? I don't really know how that works. If you ask me to explain how this is working right now, I couldn't do it. I have no idea.
Oh yeah, like I was an audio engineer for live theater, and I had an understanding of how microphones and speakers work, but how that transfers into digital files with right. I got no idea. And so simple things that we take for granted, like you said, drinking water, turning on the lights. These are things that we can generally say this works because of blank. But a young person is going to have far more questions than that. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important, not just because we did discuss having the young readers driving the questions, but why it's important to cultivate that curiosity for children?
Right. I think for a couple of reasons. One, I just think it's important to have an appreciation for your stuff and for the process and for the world, the natural world and the unnatural world as well. And also, one of the things that's most important to me is that children and adults, children and other people, all that understand who. It's not just the what is involved, but it's the who that is involved in bringing these things to them. So, the unsung heroes, the people who make this world run, right? It's not me, maybe it's you, it's not me, but the real people, the people doing the real work, people driving the trucks, people planting the apple seeds, people, tending the farm, people getting up at 2 a.m. and stocking your grocery shelf so that you have what you need on there. People fixing the electrical grid so that you can flick your lights on. People making sure that the water is clean. These are the people that I feel like don't necessarily get the full respect that they deserve. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're kind of hidden, and that bothers me. I think sometimes I want children and other people, again, to be respectful and towards the people who are making their lives easier, or who are providing these things to them. I don't think there's enough of that. I mean, it comes down to even, that translates just to when you go out to the store or you go out to the restaurant, the wait staff, like, you better respect these people. Be nice. This is tough stuff that people are doing. And it's often just behind the scenes where people don't see it. They just take it for granted. And I'm not happy with that. I want that to change. But I also, that sounds really serious. I also just want it to be fun and, joyful. Like, the world is amazing. Like, these things are incredible. An apple is an amazing thing. Like, how did that happen? And then we eat it and it's incredible. Sparking that level of just wonder and joy is really important, I think, for children. I think they have that naturally. Everything's new to a child, right? And then we just talked about this sort of not knowing what you don't know. I think it's important to that phrase, if they're asking questions, to not shut that down if you don't know. But when they ask these impossible, why is the sky blue, right? To not shut that down. But the phrase, I don't know, but let's find out together. That's really important. So, there may be questions that are on different topics that you know nothing about. And to just, I think it's important to acknowledge for kids, it's okay not to know. It's really okay. And we'll find out. We'll figure it out together. That sort of journey of discovery is, I think, important.
And you mentioned that the who is behind it translates to not just the things talked about in your books, but also people working in restaurants and people out living everyday lives. And you even said that it sounds serious, wanting things to change so that people are more respectful and nicer to these people working in service industries, people like teachers, people working in schools. I think that that's really important. And it's also fair to just say that something that I think about a lot is how empathy is a very natural thing, but it's like a muscle that needs to be stretched.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the places in these books where you were surprised to find just how many different people were involved in the process to bring something that a child can tangibly feel and experience?
Right. I mean, the first book, The Apple, I don't think about it. I go to the grocery store and pick an apple off the shelf. But then when you start to think about it, you're like, okay, there are, it made me think about and appreciate every person at that store. The person who literally 2 a.m, that's when they do this, going to the store and putting that on the shelf. Well, how did it get there? Okay, so that meant that somebody had to be there to take it off the truck. All right, these are workers. They're getting not a whole lot of money and not a whole lot of respect. But then how did it get on the truck? Like that. So there's the shelf stalker. There's the person who met the truck to take it off the truck. There's the truck driver who drove it to the store. Then there's who put it on the truck. Well, it's people, working in fields who picked the apple off the tree and packaged it for you and then put it in the truck, right? Well, how did that tree get there? Well, then there's peat farmers. This is what they do for their lives, right? So now what do we have to 5, 6, right? And then, which I didn't even put in there, but there's inspectors. There's, there's all kinds of things that have to happen that probably wouldn't interest a child all that much. But this is the government inspector. It probably wasn't going to be all that exciting for a 5-year-old. But it has honestly made me more aware and appreciative of everyday people doing everyday things. Because what if they stopped? It would go. I mean, you could live without me. You live without lawyers, but the world would come to a screeching halt without the people who do these things every single day. And I think you're right that empathy is natural. I mean, you can see a baby if you are acting sad, a baby will look concerned. And you're right, it has to be much like empathy. Appreciation has to be cultivated. I think if children witness dismissiveness towards others or lack of interest or sort of entitled behavior with products, I think they begin to think that's okay. And it's not okay. It really isn't okay.
There was probably the best example of this when I was working in children's theater. We did a series of, we called it theater for very young audiences, which was for children 3 and under. And it was very intimate shows. We would lay out this round rug in the middle of a room wherever we would go to perform. And then the kids would all sit in a circle. Their parents would sit behind them, or the people working at the daycare, or whoever it may be that we went to. And we did a show called Brother Bear. And it started with, it was just 2 bears, a boy bear and a girl bear, waking up after hibernation. And they would pass out these little interactive elements, like little flashlights for lightning bugs, little tiny leaves that they can fan with. And everybody got a little tiny piece of cloth. When the show ended, they were laying down to hibernate. And the brother tucked his sister bear into their little cave at the center of the stage, and he would lay down. No dialogue for this entire ending of the show. He would lay down, he would turn over and start shivering. And as soon as one little toddler got up and laid their small 6-inch square of fabric on top of the actor, all the kids got up and gave their little fabric to him so that he had a blanket. And that's
so sweet.
Every single show this happened. It was just so beautiful to see it every single time.
Oh, it just gives you hope for the humanity, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
it really does. Oh, you're so sweet.
I'm such a crybaby for all these things that I used these stories from when I used to work there. And Maureen, you have another book that's coming out in this series that should be coming out around the time of the release of this episode. Can you talk a little bit about that one that's coming up?
Sure. This next one is it is titled at the moment the beautiful and a bit broken yet still beautiful shell, and it's a story of a grandfather and a grandson finding a beautiful but a bit broken but still beautiful shell on the beach and wondering where that shell came from. How did it get to the beach? So a lot of times, you might see shells on the beach, you're not paying any attention to where it came from. And so this particular shell turns out to be a clam shell. And so the story goes backer and backer from all of the critters and creatures and algae that used this particular shell right back to the beginning when the clam itself was in the shell. It's very pretty. The illustrations are going to be gorgeous. I can say that because I didn't do the illustrations. My illustrator is Nancy Conde, and she's amazing. So they will be very beautiful, and I think you'll enjoy it. I think it'll be a fun journey, again, where you have to stop, look at a thing and think about it. Well, how did this get here? What was this thing's life before we saw it on the beach?
And I like to close out these interviews by asking the same question to all authors. So feel free to use this as also your final words. It's a very open-ended question. Maureen, how do you see yourself and the work that you do as an author?
I see myself as helping to bring some joy and some wonder to the world. I think there's nothing better than reading with your child, talking to your child, asking questions about your child. And if I can spark some appreciation for everyday things and some appreciation for everyday people while allowing children to have that beautiful, special time of reading with a grown-up person in their lives, then I feel like I've accomplished something. One of the things the one thing that's made me the happiest of all these things, it's great when I sell these books. I'm not suggesting I don't sell these books, but I have donated these to like Children's Hospital in Seattle. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. To daycare centers, to the children's hospitals. That's a joy to me to give them to people. And then sometimes I'll get back photos from if I give them to friends and family, or people ask me for them, I'll sign them. And then I get the pictures back of kids reading them. And it just makes my heart happy to see that, to see other people happy reading my books.
Thank you. That was an interview with Maureen Devlin. You can learn more about Maureen and her books at MaureenDevlin.com. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. If you appreciate the work being done on this show, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show to new listeners. Second, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at BookFairPod. Lastly, you can follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebookfair. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.